Right. Again. And so I like to kick off things really easy. 30-second intro. And maybe share one interesting thing about you that people might not know about. And we'll start from Mike first.
All right, perfect. So thanks everybody for attending. A bit of background on myself. I started my career as a software developer for a biotech company called Celera Genomics, where we were the first company to map the human genome. And then I made the jump to the dark side of sales and was in enterprise tech sales for 13 years. Subsequently, I founded or co-founded a technology or analytics company where we were building a platform for sales professionals, and we ultimately pivoted the company into a MarTech company, just given the value that we can provide to marketers. Something uniquely interesting. Most people don't know this. I actually had a geology degree with a background in engineering.
There you go. Geologist. Did you do any like digs or anything?
Yeah, a lot, quite a bit.
Nice.
That's awesome.
Please, Bryce.
All right, Bryce Layton. I'm a GM of sales for the Eastern U.S. for Niara. We're a big data security analytics company. What we focus on is insider threats as well as malicious employees, so people on the inside doing bad things. Also, we focus on if somebody were to get Mark's credentials,
Happens all the time.
the company would think it's Mark. So we quickly figure out that, hey, this is not acting like Mark. He's not on ESPN. He's trying to bang on the engineering server. Who is this guy? It's not Mark. Let's find out what's going on. So we use big data and take in all the security feeds from all the different security products and bring them in and map them out over a timeline. And then, voila, we find the insider threat. So I'm GM there at Niara. Background in technology sales for a long time. In fact, here in DC, I actually worked at Morgan Stanley, and I push new issues at night. And what that means is you call on behalf of a big swinging broker, because at that time I was in my early 20s, nobody would open up a big fat account with me. So somebody like Mark, who might be like 60 years old, has 600 customers, you'd say, hey Bryce, call my book for me at night, push new issues, if you get somebody to bite, I'll split the juice with you, I mean, you'd split the commission. So I called and pushed new issues. One of the new issues I pushed was a company called UUNet. So I had to learn about that because I'd call an old lady at night, excuse my age stuff, but would have to tell them about the company. And then the next one was Netscape. And I'm like, man, I got to learn about this industry. This thing's taken off. I took a couple classes at Northern Virginia Community College. I'm like, I'm not going to be an engineer. So I took a job on top of a Chinese restaurant in Beltsville, Maryland. The name of that company was Digex. Wow. And ever since then, I've been running like a horse. So that's a little bit about me. One interesting tidbit is I have an interesting degree as well. Mine is urban planning. So what are you going to do with that? But at night, I sold credit cards at night. And I did that for MBNA America. So I was the lousy guy that calls you at dinner time trying to get you to take a credit card. And it's actually where I figured out that sales and marketing needs to work together. Because for the longest time at MBNA, I was just pushing up a straight up card. You know, hey, do you want to buy an MBNA, or not a buy, but do you want to take an MBNA credit card? No, click. Next one, do you want to take an MBNA credit card? No, click. Then marketing figured out, and MBA was the first to figure this out, was affinity marketing. They said, hey, tonight, guess what? You're calling on behalf of the National Education Association. Their logo is going to be on the card. Make sure you mention that. Started doing that. All of a sudden, the take rate went up by 50%. Then we started calling hunters, and like Ducks Unlimited, take rate went up again. So marketing does play an important part of sales, and so I'm happy to be here and speak about it.
I was going to say, you know, we're trying to make friends here because there are like, you know, a lot of marketing folks in the room.
Yeah.
But I think what's also interesting, trying to sell like UUNet issues to you know, old folks.
Oh yeah, trying to explain what the internet was when it was just coming out, you know, and you know, all I was thinking about was how to make that beer money to, you know, to go out to rumors at night when I was done.
Julie.
It's like, wow, your story was like a blast from my past because I was at UNet, so all those companies that you mentioned are definitely my past. So I've been an enterprise technology marketing person, doing marketing all across the board, from actually product management and product marketing to more strategic marketing and communications, all demand and lead gen stuff now that we've done, and I'll talk more about it during the actual questions. But I was at, let's see, when I first started AOL, and then UNet, which then became what, MCI, no, sorry, we became WorldCom, then became MCI WorldCom, and then was WorldCom, and then was Verizon. It wasn't now, it's
You went
something.
back to MCI
Oh,
before
MCI.
I went to Verizon.
I'm sorry, I missed one of the reorgs, yeah, exactly, yeah, so it was really fun. So I have a really quick funny story. Do you guys remember, so when MCI WorldCom, when they came together, right, so WorldCom actually bought MCI, and they spent $500,000 on branding. Like, what are we gonna do for the branding for MCI WorldCom? So if you guys go back and look at it, you know what they did? They smushed them together, and they paid $500,000 to the agency to do it. Check it out, it's a true story. Yeah. So that's a nice fact. Another interesting fact about me, my major, so I will follow the trend, was history and literature of France and England from 1740 to the present. The present was a while ago, I graduated college a while ago. But, so useless.
And your
You know,
parents paid for that degree?
can you believe it? I know, right? But when I went to college, you could do stuff like that, get away with it. Actually, you know what it was? It was a grounding in being able to write and think, right? And really get your message across, which is perfect for marketers, right? So it actually turned out very well.
Amazing how they take those crazy degrees and turn them into gold. But I want to talk a little bit about that whole gold thing, because what we're trying to do here in this whole sales and marketing world is take something which is kind of not really known in the world and get it out there and get people to be interested in it. But it seems that we're talking a lot about this whole idea of like sales and marketing not really getting along. So, and while they may have always been an issue, it just seems like it's coming up so often now. So is something fundamentally changed in the sales and marketing world, or maybe change in the buyer perspective, that we are now having a lot of these kind of intersections and battles between sales and marketing? And let whoever wants to take that first, but.
So I'll go ahead. Yeah, I think something absolutely has changed, especially in the past, call it 6-7 years, which is the buyer's journey has changed. They do a tremendous amount of research before they even contact a salesperson. The internet makes so much, this wealth of information available to a buyer. On the tension side, I think every part of an organization has tension. Engineering thinks, hey, I built a great product, it's going to sell itself. Marketing thinks, if I create great content and I create a great educational process, the product's going to sell itself. And then the sales rep says, well, without me, the company would never sell anything. So there's always this tension between the different parts of every organization.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I mean, the buyer's journey definitely has changed. I mean, I don't know if any of you bought a new car recently, but you probably used TrueCar. Went right in there with all the information. I did that when I bought my car recently. I was like, boom, this is what everybody's paying. I don't want to pay a cent more than this, and I want floor mats, right? So, so that's putting, that's where marketing really gets important, because you want to make sure they have the right information out there, and that's where social media and how people talk about you and your company is very important. Prior to this, I worked 8.5 years at a company called Aerohive, cloud-based Wi-Fi routing and switching. And as soon as a customer would get on there and say something negative on Twitter, oh my gosh, would it go to the top of the queue in support? I mean, it was amazing, and marketing was all over that. Oh my gosh, this guy's not happy, go send him a shirt, do whatever we can. But the customer really comes to the table armed, and then once they are a customer, they're still armed. So the power has really moved to the customer, and you got to play to that. So my feeling.
I think the tension comes about because of the visibility now. So, a lot of what I do, which is really interesting for what you do, right, with data, and what Natalie does with data, is that you can track everything, right? And so when I go into, like the weekly sales and marketing meeting, or I go to the board meeting, right, I've got metrics, or I've got numbers on everything. So then sales has to kind of justify, right,
Yeah.
against my numbers, because everything is visible, and you're supposed to be tracking, right, and reporting on everything. So I think that's the source of a lot of the tension.
Well, it seems that marketing then, to that point, has really changed from this more kind of like amorphous, like we were talking about brand, or even like the social activity, to get really data driven.
Yeah.
Right? And so how much of that are you truly tracking? Because I think, to your point, particularly with what you're doing, a lot of stuff gets necessarily tracked, but no action ever happens. Want to talk? about like a little bit about that kind of a gap, just from like, using the data perspective?
So, interesting question. I mean, one, marketers are having to change to becoming so much of creatives to statisticians. I mean, because there is, in order to justify a huge budget for marketing, you've got to be able to justify why you're spending, you know, if it's not measurable, it didn't happen.
Right.
The CEO of a $3 billion company once told me, hey, telling me that the reason why we're spending money on this is because we did it last year is no longer a good reason to spend money on it. Things like, hey, do I put an ad on for the Super Bowl? Well, if you can't measure it, why are you going to spend millions of dollars? So everything that marketing is doing today needs to be measurable. But on the same, and then in the sales side, sales is actually very easily measurable, which is, did you make your number or not? And that's really what the executive team is looking for.
Yeah, to that point, I mean, it does seem that there's a lot of emphasis in marketing taking a little bit more of that ownership because of the data that's available, right? I think of things like the rise of lead gen, demand generation, the inbound phenomenon that became really popular with all the marketing automation tools. So I guess the question is, it reminds me of a quote by Peter Drucker. I don't know if you've heard this one, but the role of marketing is to make selling superfluous. And then there was a recent blog post, maybe not so recent, maybe 3 months ago, that said, marketing is killing sales. Right? So is that true? Is marketing taking more of that kind of that funnel and that ownership away from sales, or is that not really happening? I'll let anyone kind of
I'll defend myself.
You'll
but,
defend yourself? Okay. It's good that sales, we've got to defend ourselves a little bit.
I think marketing and sales are coming together. What's interesting, in my previous company, Aerohive, we kind of had a mix of old line and new line kind of marketing, and they were working together, and they all worked well. But I could feel the tension, because at the beginning, when the company first started, they weren't as metrics driven, and then a new guy came in who was very metrics driven, running the marketing department, and he had like an Adobe background and stuff like that. And I could see some of the folks in marketing starting to get uncomfortable, because much like sales feels the weight of that number every quarter, marketing was feeling the weight of that number, and then also the projects that were getting funded by marketing were the only ones that could be tied to a number. How many leads, what's the ROI, and that kind of thing. And then of course we started tracking everything from website hit all the way down to the sale, where before in the early days we weren't doing that, and the only thing that we saw getting funded for marketing is anything that could be tracked all the way back. And we started using all sorts of new and interesting technologies like Marketo and things like that, understanding, I don't know, I'm going to go off on a tangent here, but I thought that was very helpful. So you do an event, or you make a bunch of sales calls, it's very helpful the next day to see, hey, did Mark hit my site or not? Okay, check it out. He hit it quite a bit, 13 page hits. Chances are he's interested, And also the other technologies that let you know if the email's been opened or looked at, because you've got to be efficient. And I think the whole thing is about being more efficient. And then also, people are so bombarded with calls. I mean, I don't know what I can imagine what it's being like on the other end of me. It must be painful, So people are getting all these calls. So you got to have a much more targeted approach than you used to have. It used to be spray and pray. I think now it's much more targeted, like what your company does at the right time. Targeting and timing is it's like that play where you're hiking the ball. The tight end goes out and he's not even looking, and it lands in his hand. And that's what sales and marketing's got to be like these days. And hopefully we don't fumble the ball.
So I think, to answer your question a little bit deeper as well, is it really depends on what industry you're in. For example, newer SaaS-based companies that are charging anywhere from $100 to $1,000 a month, they can't hire, no offense, Bryce to go
that's true.
Run around and sell a high dollar ticket item. So in that particular world, marketing plays just an unbelievable role in whether or not the company is successful. Whereas when you're looking at higher dollar items, then you do need the Bryces of the world to go educate the market, meet with customers. It's a much longer sales cycle. The educational process is much longer. So again, it really depends on on what industry.
I think it also depends on the industry, the product, what they're selling, obviously. But it also depends on the organization itself, like how it's set up. Because I would say, one of the things when we were talking about, the whole topic and does marketing kill sales and things like that, there's, do you guys all work with inside sales? Do you have inside sales? Does everyone have inside sales? So inside sales, I think, is a really interesting organization, right, within a company. Because to me, it bridges that gap between marketing and sales, right, kind of traditionally. And sometimes, like, I've been in places where I have inside sales, right? So it's literally every day, right? Like, we sit there and I'm in charge, right, of like, here are my numbers with inside sales guys. But also where inside sales obviously was sitting on a sales organization and was tied more to enterprise sales, right? So on account managers. So it was, they're a very interesting group, and so, but I think things like saying marketing kills sales, I think that's the source of a lot of this tension, right? That there is this thing that's separate between marketing and sales, as opposed to we all work in the same company and we have the same goal.
Yeah.
With the same goal, right, which is to sell.
At the end of the day.
At the end of the day, that's what we're there for, right? We're there to sell.
Well, as a lifelong marketer, I mean, what do you see as how you fit into what sales is trying to do? What is your mission ultimately?
My mission as a marketer, I've always believed this, is that sales is my customer, right? So, I mean, literally, so everything I do is, or part of your team or whatever, so, but sales is my customer. So, there's a whole set of things you guys know as marketers need to do. So on the branding side, right, and on kind of other things that we have in place, and there are the specific sales, lead gen, demand gen kind of things that we do as well. But if a sales guy comes to me at any time, it's like 6 o'clock at night. This is tech, right? This is like, so 6 o'clock at night says to me, Julie, we have an RFP due at 8 o'clock, right? And I need these things done.
You sound awesome.
Right, no, but you drop everything. I thought it would be more of a fight, but no, you drop everything and you get it done. You sit there and you work it and you get it done, because the point is, right, that I'm here, our marketing is here to make the sale happen with you, right?
And I think that's why it's so important to celebrate the wins. So
Right.
one of the things I instituted when I was at Aerohive is whenever we have a deal win, not only would I put the rep's name on there and the sales engineer, but I put the key people from marketing. If it was an opportunity development rep, which reported to marketing, if they
Right.
uncovered it originally, and it would get paraded all around the company, and that made the next person that was on the marketing team want to be involved with a deal again. And then
Yeah.
also, I always
Right.
tried to incorporate, get marketing out on a sales call with me, or listen in on a sales call, so that way they're bought in, right?
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
and I think the more you collaborate that way, the more you'll, because
better.
once you make a sale, you start getting addicted to it, right? Even if you're in marketing, you're like, okay, because like you're addicted to it obviously
Yeah.
now. So get you in the mix on a call, doing a deal, I think it totally helps.
I mean, to your point, Bryce, I think where a lot of organizations that are hugely successful in creating kind of this sales and marketing alignment is, I don't know if Hunter's still in the room, but that this is Higher Logic. And when he was giving me the tour, sales was on this side of the building, marketing was on this side of the building. So already you're creating a divide just by locality
Yeah.
versus sitting the two together. Because they all do work towards a common goal. Absolutely.
Where
Another,
sales isn't even in the building.
yeah,
I'm
well,
just
I mean,
kidding.
well,
But
inside.
when they're outside,
yeah,
they're
right,
selling,
right.
right? They're going out in the office.
So, I'll go on a quick tangent here as well. So, if you think about, like, if I could give one piece of advice to everybody in the room tonight, it's all around top of funnel. Think about your top of funnel, and how many of you in the organization that are marketing leaders, you go to the CEO and you define, hey, I'm going to generate X number of leads this quarter that's going to go to my sales team. Probably everybody does. And then the sales manager goes, or sales VP goes to the CEO and says, I'm going to generate X amount of revenue this quarter. But the two of them never talked, and so therefore, there's really no alignment. And when marketing says, or when sales says, hey, all you give us is shit leads, and sales says, or marketing says, oh, you never followed up on the leads that I gave you, the fundamental problem is the top of funnel definition of what is a lead. So marketing should sit down with sales, the VPs, and get your top 2 reps from sales and get your 2 marketing reps and saying, look, we're not leaving a conference room until we have a definition of what a good lead looks like. So therefore, you don't have this fighting back and forth of this was a crappy lead or you didn't follow up on the leads that we gave you.
Maybe we could dig into that, because I think there is so much tension in terms of trying to figure out, like, what is the lead, right? Because the classic line, the leads are shit, and you go back to like the Glenn Ross, like, no, you're shit,
Yeah.
And we want to get away from that because obviously that's not really productive. But the flip side is we do need to get some sort of rules of engagement around taking a lead from that top of funnel component when you're talking about, okay, here's a MQL, a marketing qualified lead. When is it a sales qualified lead versus when it's an actual opportunity? So do you have like any advice or things that you've done to institute that agreement?
I think you have to bring the teams together and define that together, because all too often the different groups or different parts of the organization are defining what a lead is to them,
Sure.
versus what it means to the other person. I'll ask the audience a question. So, how many of you sell an enterprise product that you have outside salespeople?
A fair number.
Okay, so how many times have you actually been on a sales call to a customer site? Okay, so obviously a lot less hands. So what I always recommend, even if you only have an inside sales division, marketing should be sitting on customer sales calls. Because then they really hear what is the customer's pain point. Hey, where did the customer just wake up and go, wow, that actually is a great technology or a great solution to my problem. But all too often, marketing is creating lots of great content and thinking about things in their own vacuum versus really hearing the customer's voice. So again, that's one thing you can do to help break down those silos.
Yeah, it's actually.
I think there's a question.
Oh yeah, please. Yeah. If you have questions, please. It's not just us talking here. We want all of us to kind of be part of the conversation. So if you have something that you want to offer up or suggest or a question, please.
Love it, thank you. My name is Jeff, I'm in sales, and I rely heavily on marketing, have for years, because my very first good lead came out of marketing, and I was able to make my whole year number out of it. This is a few years ago, but at the end of the day, it's like, I rely on them for two things. One, good lead, because they give me information. I'll take a lead any day, I don't care. I'm in sales, give me a good name, I'll run with it, right? But more importantly, when you run with it and you're in front of the customer, there's no reason why you can't bring the marketing lead in if it's a big enough deal, saying, listen, by the way, you're not a potted plant, by the way, you're actually participating in this, here's your role, and we lay it all out ahead of time. But they also know things about the product, no matter how much training the salespeople have, they still, oh, forgot to tell you that. But they know it when the customer brings it up. So you're not caught. Let me get back to you. So marketing is key. I rely on them. I need them.
Yeah, I'm also going to say that, lead scoring to me is a living thing, right? Because, and this is the point, you're constantly having a discussion, and it's called a funnel for a reason, because you make it wider and you make it narrower, right? And this is based upon the conversation between sales and marketing to do it. So to just have a blanket statement that says something like leads are shit is, I think, completely unproductive, obviously.
Yeah,
the point is to get to constantly get better, right? Get better at what you're doing, talk, right, about like how many leads are going through the funnel, what kind of leads are going through the funnel. Marketing is, there's a whole lot of work that I think that sales doesn't see, that marketing does, right? So there's a lot of data mining, right, and different things that we do, which you should know, right, from your behavior based, right, software that marketing absolutely does, right? Against refining messages and targeting and segmenting and putting people through various programs, right? That sales absolutely does not see, right? But it's in response to, right, hopefully the feedback we're getting, right, from customers, from sales, from the industry, right, that we're looking at, that kind of thing, from things going on in the industry. So there's just a whole set of work that sales never sees. So maybe we should make it more visible.
So I have a question, because, I do marketing consulting. So I'm mostly on the marketing side, and a lot of what I focus on is really in the lead generation. And I think that that the marketing automation and being able to feed into the sales automation is really fantastic. And in a way, it really helps with that communication, especially in larger organizations where you can't have the direct communication. But on the other hand, it also makes it more complicated, especially with the scoring.
Yeah.
And especially with this funnel, because I have a problem with it being a funnel.
Mhm.
And I think the scoring, first of all, is complicated because nobody can ever define what an MQL is and what an SQL is. And these systems have become really complicated based on demographics and based on behavior. And I recently worked, with a client, and they've all completely forgotten what it takes for somebody to score to become a lead, right? And nobody knows why anyone becomes a lead and gets passed into the lead queue anymore. And some people are there too early, like they
Right.
just download some random white paper off of some third-party site, and they don't know why they're there, and they're too early. And some people are there and they've already bought a competitive product, and so they're too late, right? And then people get disqualified, right? So the salesperson disqualifies a lead. So then a person is disqualified. So then they're in the sales automation system, disqualified, and they never receive any more
Just find out
marketing.
they haven't got pushed back in the nurture to.
Right,
work in.
so they never get any more marketing material again. So if they get pushed over too early, they're disqualified, they never receive any more marketing material, and so then they're just dead.
But it seems like, there's so many different layers that you mentioned. First it's just, who are you actually even targeting, right? Just
Right.
agreement on accounts, right? And I think that's like a whole nother discussion, I think we may have
Right.
like a whole nother week to talk about, which is account-based marketing, right?
Yeah.
But then just even fundamentally, how we actually score leads. I mean, what have been some things you've done? Maybe just some examples, just how to maybe get better handle on the agreement on scoring, and also maybe to make sure that sales and marketing are in fact talking to each other when it comes to disagreements on what is qualified and unqualified.
I feel like, I don't feel like it's hard to define the different stages of funnel at all. I think you define it and you agree on what the definitions are, but you have to document the process, right? And make it very clear and as easy as possible, right, for everyone to follow it, period, right? So a lot of times what we'll do is, because you're absolutely right. I think, I think marketing automation actually doesn't mean a whole lot if it's not integrated with a CRM, right?
Right.
With the sales, because because
Agreed.
yeah, because my reporting, I have to track all the way through. I got to track all the way through because in the end, it's not just leads; it's leads that lead to pipeline, and it's leads that lead to revenue, right?
Mhm.
So I got to track all the way through, right, for everything I'm doing. But so it's easy to define these things, and honestly, like for the most part, when I talk to sales doesn't really care. Like people, when I talk
Short
to
attention
sales,
span.
they don't
Just want a
care.
commission check, that's it.
They really don't. They don't care about what the definition is, right? They just like, okay, you've defined it. You just define it, and so I'll define it, and I'll send it to them, right?
Yeah.
They'll say like, here is the process, right? Like when you have this kind of lead, you do this. When you do that, right? When you do this, you do this. Here's how to use lead status, right? So that you can, right? So sales on the CRM side can fit in with what I'm doing with automated programs, right? On so I use Marketo right now. On the Marketo side, to automatically push people right through the funnel and to score them appropriately, right, and rate them. But then also a lot of times what I'll do is sales will also use things like your own stats, like your lead rating or something, right? So you guys, so it might be a combination, right, of scoring and rating, that kind of thing. But we're working together the whole time, and it's not this, kind of thing. Because the other thing I think which leads to a lot of tension in companies is that handoff, right, from marketing qualified to sales accepted, right? Because, sales, and sales can always come back and say, no, I don't accept it, right? Like, what do you mean? It's like, what do you mean? We defined that, didn't we? No. But because marketing, we don't stop working when we hand off that lead, right? We're still doing, right, all the things to support what sales is doing. So for instance, when I mentioned inside sales earlier, we used to do, I had a very good and active inside sales team, right? That we would do training with them all the time, right? And make sure that marketing, we would do it. We would coordinate product managers to come in, right, to talk about industry trends. And like, these are the things, when we're talking to people in, at these managed hosting providers, right? Or like, honestly, how, like, just saying, here's the difference between an MSP, right? A service provider, a hosting provider, or what. It's like literally doing all those things so that they would have what they needed to actually move that sale, right, move that lead through the funnel, from sales accepted to sales qualified. So marketing, we don't stop. So I think it's a very artificial thing to say there's a handoff, and that actually is, I think, a lot of part of the attention, but that means that, you know, we're not doing our job and helping.
Yeah. Well, marketing definitely plays a big part in training as well, because
Yeah.
typically marketing is developing all the material, they're training the customer as well as typically the sales employees. One of the things I did at Arrowhide, had an inside sales team there as well, and one of the things I did that always kept them on their toes was that we had a national weekly that was, you know, for customers and prospects. And at random, you never knew which inside sales rep would be called on to do the presentation that week.
Oh, wow.
There's hundreds of people on this thing, so hundreds of people from all over the country. So chances are, and you don't know if you're going to get called on or not. So you're gonna stay up on the product, right? So
You couldn't call in sick that day.
yeah, I guess you could, but if not, you're gonna get it twice next time.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that we did was kind of interesting, and I think is helpful, is that, and this is one of the things way back to the credit card days I learned, at least at MBNA America, when we'd give up and then stick you just back in the bin, was after 5 calls. So, you know, so my guarantee to marketing was that, you know, when you hand something over, I'm going to show you that it's been touched at least 5 times before we send it back to you and stick it in nurture. And how we would do that is, you know, within Salesforce, they have this, you know, you can put a VCC in there,
Yeah.
and it'll actually attach to the record, you know, so that way you can see, okay, I can see where they sent one follow-up email, hey, per my voicemail, blah, 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 here's number 2, here's number 3, here's number 4, here's number 5, okay, 5 triggers it, go back, right?
Or you can do reporting against activities, right? So, you know, different kinds of activities.
That's
Because
right.
you log them all in Salesforce, in which we also did.
Yeah, so, because not all of them work out, you know,
Yeah.
sometimes they, you know, they, like you said, they could have just downloaded something up early, right? And it wasn't the right time in the cycle, it might have just been a curious guy or gal trying to read up on stuff. But no matter what, I think these days people have a very short attention span. I don't know who in here reads an entire white paper anymore. If I sent you a white paper on my product, it's 50 pages long, are you reading that stuff? Nobody's reading that.
It
you
is
know?
interesting because this whole growing body of sales enablement, right, which is driving all your messaging, things that you're supposed to be out there kind of in the world saying to customers in terms of the value proposition, and obviously marketing is a huge component of getting that right. So yeah, again, I think that could be a layer of tension because oftentimes what I found, you know, early in my sales career was going out saying certain things, not getting any sort of resonating acceptance on the buyer end. So are like some things you kind of figured out or helped in terms of like the sales enablement side, so that sales and marketing are kind of telling the same story instead of like different stories and different PowerPoint versions and all that?
Oh yeah, that's no, I don't want to,
Oh, Mike,
but
any good war stories about the,
I mean, 100%. I mean, that was a huge point of attention, both when I was in sales and sales leadership, was everybody's telling their own story. And, you know, I've got this sales rep pitching the product this way, this sales rep pitching the product this way, then I come and pitch the product this way.
exactly?
So there's a couple things that could be done there, and back to the point before, and I think to some of your questions, is one, definition of, you know, what a good customer looks like, so account-based marketing and things like that. But then two, it really comes down to training, and one of the things that I used to do for my sales team was I would make the best guy that had the best pitch, and I would make him get on every couple weeks on a webinar or on a WebEx and make him pitch the rest of my team. because I just wanted to pound it in their head over and over and over and over again, that this is the way you pitch the product, and this is what really resonates with customers. On the marketing side, like coming from an enterprise tech sales position where frankly I had the same thing, which was I don't know what the hell marketing does, but now that I sell to marketers, I actually understand the complexity that actually goes into the job. One, you ask a lot of enterprise tech sales reps, and really, I don't know what marketing does. I don't know what content they create. And so there's this level of trust that just doesn't exist. Marketing doesn't trust sales, sales doesn't trust marketing. And I think there's quite a few things that can be done to help, broker a better relationship between the two.
Because as a rep, particularly when I was at Siebel, we would say things, and I was selling to big investment banks, right? We're selling this thing which kind of looked like what call center app for people who are making millions and millions of dollars a year selling massive deals, right? And there just was this massive disconnect. And so eventually we had to have that kind of coming together session where we said, okay, well, I know you saying this, and you're sharing this stuff, all the PowerPoints and brochures, that's just not working. And what do you do in that situation, right? Because marketing is like, well, I think this is like beautiful. Like we spent like all this market research. So are there ways of maybe just figuring that out? Because you have the tribal knowledge, you're out there.
Yeah.
How are you able to filter that back in so inside the organization they're aware of it?
So when I was at a company called Isilon, and we ultimately sold the company to EMC for $2.5 billion, one of the strategic decisions that our executives made was they said, okay, we're going to pull the best guys from the field, and we're also going to pull a couple of people in marketing, and we're going to do an off-site somewhere for 5 days. And we would sit around a table for 5 days and really just define how do we pitch the product, how do we, how do we define a lead, things like that. And once we did that, I mean, the business just really started to take off. Because all too often what I've seen or what I've experienced is executives, the CMO, the VP of sales, they think they know what's going on in the field, but they really have no clue. I went on 5 sales calls this month. I flew on an airplane to 5 different customers. Well, guess what? Your sales reps are only taking you to the customers that are really engaged. They're not taking you on first sales call with customers like, why am I having this meeting? What is this about? So there's a disengagement at the executive level of really what's going on in the field. So capturing what's happening in the field, as well as, again, allowing the marketing people to go on sales calls, allowing the marketing people to listen on sales calls, can really just drive the two organizations.
Yeah, sure.
This is kind of a question, but it's also a statement. What I'm hearing when we're talking about ad tech, but what I'm hearing consistently is that communication outside of tech is almost more important than the tech, right? Between agencies, between customers, between this organization.
And that's actually a really interesting point, because I wanted to actually ask everyone here, of the folks that are marketers and you've gone out on a sales call, does anyone want to just share, like, what was one surprising thing that you didn't know before then, that you learned during the course of being at that customer site, listening to that sales call? Anyone have like anything that they want to share? Yeah, please.
I used to when I was at Cisco, I would go on a bunch of sales calls. I was surprised how little of the call was actually about the technology itself. It was more about relationship and understanding the problem. So they didn't get really to talking about the solution until we were halfway or 3/4 of the way, and I was wondering when they were actually going to talk about what they were trying to sell. I don't know if that's a good salesperson or a bad one, but
No,
I was just surprised by that.
yeah.
Yeah, someone had a hand up there in the back. Hi, sir.
So, going on tons of these, the body language in the room is really interesting because as a marketer, you think you've got your target buyer, but oftentimes in enterprise sales, the power in the room is completely different from who you've been targeting. And the concerns of that other person, if there's 2 or 3 people in the organization in a complex buying center, might be completely different from what you've lined up your messages around. So that was really always very educational, really surprising.
Yeah, aligning messages.
Yeah.
personas that you interact with. I mean, how different is that? I think before we used to have this monolithic view when there was fewer buyers involved.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, because definitely the big deals, not just one person. If it's, typically even if the sale's over $50,000, there's typically more than one person that needs to be
I find that
involved.
bar is actually going a little bit like even lower and
Yeah.
lower now.
So, and then now from a marketing perspective, now you're not only marketing to this, really technical person, but then you're also within that company you're marketing to might also be somebody else. And so, hey, here's the marketing that goes to the C level at this company, and then here's the marketing that goes to
Right.
the tech level. So there's actually, marketing used to just be able to just have one track, but now it's got to have like a track here, a track here, and a track here.
I think that's always the case though. I mean, you talk about like one message, there's never one message. When we talk about our company or our product or our technology or what we did or our solutions, it was always, we always customized it to who we're talking to. Because marketing talks to everyone, right? You guys, you must have, anyone who's written a website in there, right? You guys know what I'm talking about, right? Because you gotta like figure out, first of all, there's some kind of like lowest common denominator, right? That you figure out, here's who I'm gonna do, and then you try to get into the detail pages and drive, right, the people to those specific pages, depending on their roles, etc. So we would always change that. So there are different messages, like even, like analysts, right? So how I talk to analysts about the company is completely different, right, than how you would talk to, maybe not how you would talk to a CIO, but how you talk to, the sysadmin, right, who is the actual recommender, right, of my product versus like a high level like purchaser.
Actually, question, Joy. How do you find out all the stuff that you're creating
Yeah.
for the benefit of sales?
Yeah.
What people are actually using?
How do I know?
How do you know what the sales teams are using from all the collateral that you
Well,
provide?
I ask them, and also they ask me, right? So like they ask me like, here's what I need. I need a different version of this. I need this thing. We work with. You have to. Your sales guys are your customers, right? So you should ask them what they need. And if you guys don't have something, marketing has provided. Period.
There's a question over here. Yeah, gentleman in the back.
One of the themes that we're talking about here is like that hand's kind of like the strategy of personalization, B2B, B2C, and we're seeing some sort of confluence there in both worlds. So my day-to-day, I'm an executive advisor at C, working with marketing teams around the country talking about this. And I think one of the things that we're studying this year is, how much personalization is enough before you start seeing just decreasing marginal returns on that. I'd be kind of curious to get your perspective.
That's
What you guys have seen, which is how much personalization is too much before you stop, and you need to kind of pull back the throttle and stop investing before you either wear yourself out or your team out, or actually just providing something.
Yeah, the proverbial battle between personalization versus automation. How far can you go one way or the other? Obviously, again, this is one of those questions where it depends on who you're selling to.
Well, if you can personalize, if you can automate the personalization, that's the best, right? Of all worlds. That's what retargeting is, right? So for advertising, we're gonna see this later, but I'll preview it. It's a different one. Do you guys? Has anyone seen? Do you guys look at the Marketunist? You guys know what I'm talking about? You should totally subscribe to it. It's great. Once a week we'll get it, Marketunist in your email. And it's these fantastic cartoons, like Dilbert for marketers, right? So it's like all the marketing kind of stuff. And one was, they've been bashing basically all the retargeting stuff, right? So it's like people who know, when you go to the checkout and they're like, oh, you're not going to buy that blue iPhone case from, that you looked at in aisle 4. And it's like creepy, right? Creepy if it happened in real life. But it's kind of cool when it happens online, right? So the things that you can get away with online that you can't get away with, there. But my answer, I don't know if I really answered it, was automated when possible, right?
Right, I think that's one of the things that we kind of arrived at, which is automate to the point that it's. I'm just curious, in your own experience, what is where do you guys draw the line when it's asking if sales is talking about I need this RFP or whatever, a pitch deck customized, where do you start saying no? What kind of guardrails do you put up to prevent that? And
I have a certain little chime in here. I think if it's B2C, it's one way, and I think if it's B2B, it's another. So I think there's a difference between, I think it depends, what you're selling. I think no matter what, there could be the chance that you get creeped out, right? So you look lovely today, Mrs. Cleaver. Okay, yeah, right, you know, so, anybody watch Leave the Beaver? I'm like,
Mrs. Cleaver?
no, wrong audience.
Eddie
right?
Haskell.
Yeah, but,
So I just want to ask, we're talking about personalization versus automation, and you three are obviously all from large, we're talking about large ticket items, large sales, etc. How do you see that working for a small company? Like, for example, someone who Marketo is just too big, too much.
Yeah.
How can you bring in the personalization and the automation?
Can I just ask a question? Do you have a marketing automation platform that you use? No.
No,
Do you
I worked for a company where I
Uh-huh.
was looking at, we brought in Salesforce,
Uh-huh.
and I was looking at how could we use what was available in there, and I
Yeah.
was looking and talking to people about Marketo, et cetera, and it was clear to us that that was too much.
Okay.
It was too much. So I'm just wondering, what do you do when you have a smaller organization and you're trying to, again, balance personalization versus automation? How do you do it?
But data is data, right? But it's also if you have a smaller organization, you're also going against a smaller target. And you're not looking at a bunch of different kind of differences between in your customer segments. So I was one of the early users of Eloqua, actually. So way back in like 2008, 2000, something like that, like when I first started. And I used Marketo, and I've used Marketo as well. But before that, I used Salesforce because, right, so I ran as marketing, right, I set up Salesforce and did all my reporting, right, and all the data collection through Salesforce. So I just customized it for that, right? So when these guys got on the phone, different kind of surveys we did, we like dumped the data. Data's data, right? So like, and you can then pull it out. And Salesforce is very, I think it's very easy to use in terms of reporting, right? Being able to like pull out. Yeah, it's very customizable. It's really easy that way. So, and you have an idea, right? You as a smaller company, you're probably closer to your customers and your target, kind of customers than possibly like the larger companies. So given that, I think that you can use Salesforce to do it, right? So then you understand different things about, like, for instance, like basically like who are your competitors, right? It's a very specific thing, right? To say that, and then based upon like who you get some data on when you're calling people and you're calling prospects and things like that, and you get a map, right, of like who the competitors are. Then you can create materials that are specific to that, right? So then you do some kind of, it's like some scorecard, right? Because based upon your information that you've pulled in Salesforce, right? You've looked in Salesforce, that here are your top 3 competitors. So marketing creates a scorecard that says like, here's how we stack up, right? So then we give sales that, and sales is able to like drop it, right? Like every time, or send it out and that kind of thing. So that's what I would suggest for you. And then if you don't need marketing automation, I think we use like constant contact, right? To send out kind of the bulk emails in that way. And it was really easy. And actually constant contact is cheap. And it's also, it's come a long way. I actually looked at it recently, and there's a lot of things that you can do with it now that you were not able to do before. So it really bridges a lot of the gap between what it was before, which is just, bulk email delivery, and something like a marketing automation platform. It is doing a lot more things than that go on the spectrum of a marketing automation platform than it was before.
So sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, no, please.
No, I think people in the audience.
There's a gentleman in the back that's been raising his hands a couple times.
It just, so this target, I'm interested in the feedback from the panel, but HubSpot is really.
That's
often
what my
a good-
question is gonna be.
Yeah, a good solution for this audience in particular, because it's very accessible, easy to get started, easy to figure out what you're doing, but it forces you to think about your messaging by audience segment. So it's more than just mechanics. And I don't know if anybody on the panel agrees or disagrees or has any more wisdom about that.
So, I'm in the personalization business, and John, you know that. So I actually love the question. It's a great segue to having a deeper conversation. But when you talk about personalization, when somebody says, "Oh, we're trying to get into personalizing more content," it's like, okay, what are you trying to personalize? A lot of people will say, "Well, I personalized the name in the email." Well, if you decide that you're going to personalize the name in the email, make sure you at least get it right. Because I can't say, I got an email today it was a marketing email clearly, and it said hi, and then a huge space, comma, and they clearly didn't have my first name. So,
I can't tell you how many times I get emails addressed, hello, enterprise sales.
right.
I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm thinking about just changing my name legally.
So, where I'm going with this is, before you even really start to think about getting fancy, you should at least make sure your mechanics
Get the basics
are correct. Another thing that I find, I mean, one of the biggest problems is marketers, which frankly, marketers tend to be creatives and not super technologists, is the infrastructure that a lot of marketers have set up for their marketing automation systems are just flat out wrong, and they don't think about deliverability. Deliverability is an issue. You're spending all this time creating great content, but you're not thinking about, hey, is this actually going to make it into somebody's inbox? And so therefore, there are some things that you can do to increase deliverability, which are actually very simple to do,
Maybe just
but a lot of
share, like,
marketers don't do that.
You just maybe share 2 or 3 just deliverability tips, because I think people always, because that's a challenge I have, honestly, and I'm
Right.
curious.
Yeah, no, so I've actually been a little bit on a warpath with this, and it's actually been very good for my business, is things like, if you don't set up your DKIM record correctly, so DKIM it affects deliverability, it affects your sender reputation, and the next time you get an email, if you use Google as your email service provider, you can easily see via mail.share.hubspot.1, and it tells you the server that it's coming from, where spam filters will look at that and they'll go, oh, well, this is clearly spam because everybody else is sending via the same email server. That's a very simple 2-minute fix that most marketers don't even do. So that's one.
And they're thinking the
I didn't
campaigns
even know
failed
it's
because they never saw it in the first place.
It got put into a spam folder, etc. Yep.
Can you spell that?
DKIM, DKIM.
Go on.
Okay, you have a question?
I'm hearing all these different ideas between marketing, sales, and we have a startup company, and we have not entered the game of marketing and sales or even the funding yet, but nothing more than that. What is your suggestion in terms of as marketing and sales experts for startups as to what comes first, the chicken or the egg, or they both have to be there together?
We'll get to that question right after. Do you have one other or 2
Yeah,
suggestions
I
just
can-
on the deliverability?
I can go on,
and then
I
we'll
can
get
go
to
on
your
that
question.
Okay.
day for days. But another thing to think about too is your list cleanliness. Marketers tend to hold the trophy and say, I have 50,000 contacts in my database. And then what do? They blast all 50,000 of those contacts on a regular basis. And your open rate is actually crap. But that actually affects your deliverability because Google, in their algorithms, they'll determine, hey, only 5% of people ever open this, so clearly people don't care about it. Or somebody within an organization that uses a corporate spam filter, that corporate spam filter will actually recognize it and tag it with marketing in the subject line or put it in the spam folder. So if you're sending to a bunch of contacts that are never going to engage with you,
You gotta get them out.
you've got to get them out. Or what you can also do,
Because Google will
is-
just think you're a crap slinging monkey dog.
exactly. So the other option that you have is take those non-engagers and send them either different messaging or send to them on a different, like rather than sending my weekly newsletter to these 10,000 people that have never ever ever opened my email, I'm actually going to send to those 10,000 people once a month. And I'm going to send them their own direct campaign to see if I was able to engage in them. So by holding that trophy really high of, I've got the list of 50,000 people that I'm sending this email to, you're actually really, really, really hurting yourself. So I would say that's one big thing that you can solve literally.
Cleanliness, and then just the size. Yeah, I mean, 50,000 seems crazy, right? When really, how many of those people are gonna open it ultimately? Right.
And then of course, if you personalize the delivery time, which is what we do. That actually helps with deliverability. That actually helps with deliverability at times.
Right.
Yeah.
So I do want to get to
There was
your
another question.
No, the gentleman's question in the front, just about the.
Yeah, about the startups.
About startups.
Am I to talk about it or?
Go for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you-
Okay.
Yeah,
So
startups.
about the startups, the issues we are going to be facing, we have current brand. And pilot customers, marketing, sales. So we really don't know what comes first and how do you put that. Do you guys have any suggestions, any?
I may say something heretical here, but I think going for marketing very early when you're a startup, when you don't know what your market really is not very helpful. I mean, it's
Well,
actually you're just going to waste a lot of time. What you need
That
is,
also means you go to market survey.
no. You have some thoughts? 'Cause
Yeah,
you're kind of
we're in this stage, so I wouldn't even say it's a chicken and an egg thing. You've got to go get your first 50, 100. If you're a SaaS-based company, your first 50, 100 customers before you really start investing in any kind of marketing automation. Yeah, sure, write blog posts, things like that to help you with deliveries that you can give to customers. But until you get to 50 or 100 customers, you don't even know really who your customer or the value that you can deliver.
Yeah, I mean, you're not going to build a buyer persona when you're not even really sure, like, if your product even meets the needs
Right.
of the buyers that you were presuming would be interested. So,
Sorry.
so yeah, please.
I have a slightly different perspective, just because I've worked with startups. So one of the best experience I had was with a company called Science Logic. I don't know if you guys know it in this area. So I was employee number 4, with the 3 founders and me and a couple of people, right? And they were, I don't know, probably at that point, they had probably around $100,000 in revenue. And we grew it to several $10, $20 million and 150 employees by the time I left.
And just
One
so-
thing, like when you're that small,
Just for perspective, and
Yeah.
what was kind of like the type of product? Was it a big ticket item?
Enterprise.
so it was something. So it started at $30,000, I think, when we first started, and then but all the way up to millions,
Yeah,
right? So
okay.
you could spend a lot, right? So, but when you start, this is my opinion, right? This is not the only startup I've worked with. I actually really love starting with working with startups because as a marketer, it's fun because you create something out of nothing, right? Literally, right? And so I would say, when you first start off, the founders, right? You guys know your story, you know why, you know who. You are the best salespeople. You are, for a long time, you are the number 1 salesperson, right? Because even if you hire sales, you still are the one who closes the deals, right? Kind of thing. But at some point, right, you want to bring in marketing. So, and it depends on kind of where you are. You said 100 customers. You can figure it out.
Yeah.
Because one thing is that, depending on your product, the thing that marketing does when you're really small, it would make you look a lot bigger, right? Because it's painfully obvious, right? Like if you don't have marketing, if you don't have some level of, quite frankly, professionalism and how you come across in your branding, right, and that kind of thing. If you don't have it together, you look small time and you don't get the sales. You don't.
And I agree, because the founders and their background are the selling point
They are.
when you are a startup. I mean, I'm doing that
Small.
right now at Niara, where I work today, and it's, the founders, they have this video, why they founded the company, the vision, they're very passionate, and,
Yes.
it's one of the things I use,
You hit the nail on the head. The founder's passion is what sells.
So I think,
Yeah.
to your point, and to both of your points, you mentioned that when you started, they had $100,000 in revenues, they had a couple customers, they started going.
Right.
They had already started going. He's saying that all he has right now is money. He doesn't have a product, he doesn't have,
Yeah.
so you have to get your first few customers before you should really start thinking about marketing. And the reason why I say that is, you may pivot your company. When I started 7 Cents, we were a sales platform. Well, that fell on its face. And so therefore I had to pivot the technology or the use case to focus on marketing technology. And now we're finally at the stage where we really need to start thinking about throwing fuel on the fire to getting more, to getting more customers or more top of funnel activity.
But one of the things marketing does is help you do that. I mean,
Well,
a
no,
big part
I'm
of
saying we're at
marketing
the
is-
stage now where it
Right.
makes sense for us to, but if I had hired a marketing agency 6 months ago or hired a marketing person, it would have been frankly, it would have been a waste of my money.
Right, because you would have built a whole lot of infrastructure and would have had to probably
Well,
change it.
whether you have, whether you market to a customer or, well, or pilot customer for that reason, there's still customers in our base. You still have to sell them. You still have to sell them the idea of what you're doing,
Right,
why you cannot live without it.
right.
Yep,
So I
and it's
think
the founder that,
that founder passion, I think really kind of the two sides of this, it's when you're really starting out at the very, very beginning, you have to sell, you sell, your marketing, your messaging may change in that period of time when you get to, maybe a certain kind of repeatability, like, okay, here's a set of customers that seem to gravitate towards a solution. It does make sense to probably invest in something which makes you look more credible, because the thing I've noticed with those customers that you're reaching out to from the sales side, when they're banging the phones or reaching out, those customers are doing their research. If they go to your website and it's a piece of crap,
Yes.
they're gonna think like, I'm gonna invest like how much in a solution with this? So you just gotta kind of weigh where you are and where you think your solution is. There's some other questions I want to get to before we wrap up.
What do you think, what is the best way to share the long-term responsibility with the marketing guys? Because for the sales guys, it's totally clear, so it's all about numbers. They have their fixes and their bonuses, but what about how to share, how to involve them, and how to share the responsibility with the marketing guys?
I love the
Great
question.
question.
So, frankly, I think the compensation structure on the marketing side needs to change.
Bingo.
Yeah.
Because compensation dictates behavior. Our biggest customer is a $3 billion company, and if the team, which is sales and marketing, makes their number, they go on a trip. So really, it creates an even better atmosphere of, kind of this collaboration.
It reminds me of this guy I've talked to quite a bit recently, Tim Sanders. He wrote this book called Deal Storming, which is really good. And one of the things he says that sales is a team sport. And one of the things that he did early on, at Yahoo, when his company was purchased, Broadcast.com was purchased by Yahoo, he went out to all the different divisions in Yahoo, made friends. And then when a deal was closed, he'd make sure to include them on the email chain all the way to the executives that we closed this big deal, and these were all the people that were involved. And so that's a big part of just the recognition, but also the comp structure. I think the comp structures play a huge part in the incentives.
Speaking of the comp structure, so the accountability is typically on sales because they're commission based. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yep.
But the marketers are not. Granted, let's take online sales and mobile sales off the table for the sake of argument, and only look at people sales, right? Because that's what salespeople are for. Why should back to the discussion? Should the compensation, meaning commissions, be split or deferred or managed a different way with marketers if they're helping with the sale?
Commissions or
100%. So I think there's, either some type of bonus structure or something along those lines. Now, I will say that salespeople tend to be, your good salespeople tend to be incredibly risky. Like, I'll go to a company and say, don't even pay me a salary, and I'll take 20% of the margin. Whereas marketing doesn't tend to be as risky. So it's kind of this risk reward. That being said, I still think the compensation structure for marketers needs to change to be more towards pay for performance.
And I have some input on that. So I've worked at organizations where, marketing has, you might get somebody MBOs, for example. Hey, do
Right.
this many white papers, this many whatever, which is fine. But what you can do with marketing, you can say, hey, maybe marketing's tagged to Americas, or maybe it's tagged to the whole world, or maybe it's tagged to just the East Coast, whatever it is. Hey, guess what? Here's the number for the quarter. If they hit it, you're gonna get your bonus. If they don't hit it, You know, so that way you're definitely in the same boat. You know, that way, you know, if I'm in the lunchroom, somebody from marketing's like, hey, did you follow up on that? Did you follow, you know, I want to get my bonus, you know, I want to get my bonus, right? And they're right in there with you.
But what about, a bonus is capped typically, and so are sometimes commissions. So if you only work for that number, like if your bonus is capped at N dollars,
Get out of marketing,
typically
get
they
into
don't
sales.
care beyond that number.
But I see where you're going. Hey, should marketing compensation be the identical comp plan to sales? You could try, see if you can get people to come to work for that. If so, it might be interesting, but
I think it's gonna be
It's
next
not-
to impossible.
It's not apples and apples, it's apples and oranges, you guys. Because, I mean, like, think about the work it does, right? And, you know, the whole point is that we are going through millions, right? Or like hundreds of thousands of people, right, to get funneled down to what you guys need. But there's all this work that marketing does in order to do that, right? So as I said, there's a ton of work marketing does you guys don't see. I completely agree with you, though, that it is a team effort, and I always believe that part of the bonus structure, absolutely, the bonus structure should be tied to performance, right, numbers, right? So we are a team, right, we're working towards this, and however you wanna set that up, I think that, that should happen.
All the way from marketing, all the way back into,
Yeah.
or revenue, all the way back into marketing.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
But the other, you know, just from a salesperson's perspective, like Bryce and I have lived in this world, in the tech world, if you don't make your number for 6 months, you're gone.
Yeah.
Like, it is an incredibly risky position. And a lot of marketers aren't willing to take, like, if I came to you and said, you have 6 months to generate 500 highly qualified leads for my sales division, or you're out of a job, it's gonna be very hard to recruit in that world, because you're talking about more creatives than.
And CMOs face that, but not the rest of the marketing team, to your point.
Right.
Take one last question. I want to be respectful of everyone's time, but you didn't ask a question yet. I'm getting a lot of like, all right, Richard.
Well, I kind of was curious to revisit something from a little earlier as far as, I know it's really easy to say, oh, well, where's something, a lead needs to be handed off from marketing over to sales. You know, it's different for every organization. Every organization is a snowflake. But what are some examples of kind of indicators that, hey, this is now needs to be a sales, it needs to be moving through the process over to sales versus staying to be nurtured in marketing, which you guys see?
I would say a project identified with a timeline. You know, hey, when are you looking to buy this? And digging all the way back into the marketing piece, you know, some of the qualifying questions that we had are ADRs or ODRs that were under marketing asked were, you know, if it's a competing product, how long have you had that? And there's also, what's interesting, there's tools out there you can leverage, like discover.org, if you've got a competitor you're trying to replace and things like that. They can tell you if they have this product, your competitor's product, and how long they've had it. Because usually, you know, hey, every 3 years they typically want to do something else, and you can get that all timed in the marketing thing, so this thing is popping right at the right time, and that, hey, they've got 2 months left on their 3-year contract, okay, start peppering them now with the marketing stuff, speed it up a little bit more, and then boom, hand it over to your sales gal. You know, that's when it's like, that's nirvana when it's running like that. Not like it's running like that all the time, but I don't know, a little tidbit. I might be just rambling off the mouth
No,
here.
that's
but,
good. No, I totally agree with that. I think another way to look at this is like the signals, right? So this is like, you guys know about like demographics, right, versus behavior, right, kind of thing. So it's about your scoring, like to me it's about scoring, right? And saying, and the thing is like, it's gonna change, it's a living thing. So there might be like, as we've all talked about, you know, marketing changed tremendously, right? When the internet matured, social media came out, everyone goes online, we're able to customize, write messages and personalize, and we're able to find people and give them a very specific message when they are looking to buy that thing, right? So based upon, like, so it might be a combination of things. There's like certain kinds of things, right? Like assets that you have. So like white papers, right? Combined with they're bombing your site. Like they're literally going all over your site and they're looking for very specific things, right? That's, you know, like, and so in a certain time frame, that's a hot, and then combined with that, it's in your target geographic area, or the title is the right thing, or the industry is the right thing, right? So those things combined, right, say hot, right? And then, by the way, so you assume that, but then as you do this, right, you're gonna hopefully fine tune, right, these kinds of things. But like, you can take a guess, right, to start off, like you make educated guesses about this, and then you just fine tune it, you know, kind of thing. But it's those kinds of things that you're looking for. You're really looking for someone who, like, you have reached that person, right, when they are looking for your solution, and this is why. So like, that's how, you know, that's what I would say is a sales accepted lead, that I would push that over, right? I'm still hitting them from a marketing perspective, but I'm gonna push them to sales to actually engage, because I want someone to have a conversation with this person, because, you know, it's conversations. I mean, to me, it's like, you wanna get on the phone, you wanna have a conversation, you wanna meet this person at an event, right? I think events, and I know you guys still do events, but like, I think events are great, because you can get there as a marketer or as a salesperson, because you're like face to face, right? And you're saying like, you immediately know whether your message is resonating with this person or not, right? Because they either talk to you or they walk away, right? So it's like very, very specific. And you can see and you can try different things. So like, events are a fantastic way to train inside sales, like for instance, or new salespeople, right? And to hear and to get some of your experienced salespeople out there and hear like, how do they talk about it, right? And how do people react to that? So just my little tidbit on other best practices, things that you can do. Does that answer your question?
Maybe just a quick lightning round here, because you mentioned like, you know, kind of interesting, cool tool, Bryce. So, kind of an interesting marketing tech tool that you've used recently that you think is pretty interesting.
I'll give you my full stack.
You should say
so-
7 cents.
Well, at the top of the funnel, I use a product called Destined, which Destined is actually a brilliant tool where it's a Chrome plugin. I can go to somebody's website and I can literally click the Destined button, and it'll tell me all of the technologies that are in use on that website. So I can see, I sell to HubSpot and Marketo customers, so I can immediately tell, okay, they're using HubSpot, okay, they're using Marketo, okay, they're using Eloqua, disqualify them.
Yeah.
So it immediately allows me to determine what technologies are in use. Then, if I press the people button and I'm a paid user, I have 1,000 credits. I can get everybody's email addresses for the people there. So I go and I look at, hey, these are the 100 people that Destined has email addresses for. I click the search for email. It tells me the email. So I use that. I use HubSpot Sidekick for Business, which is awesome. Saves me a ton of time. I use their templating feature a ton, and I figured out ways to use their templating feature to really get very deep in personalization. So I would say those are probably the two biggest tools that I use, and of course 7 cents. What's that?
Sidekick. HubSpot Sidekick.
It's called HubSpot Sales now.
Oh, HubSpot Sales.
But it's a brilliant tool. They have a free version, which when you send somebody an email, it'll tell you if somebody opened or clicked on an email. And then they have a paid version, which allows you to do things like templating. If you have an inside sales organization, it's a phenomenal tool because it can also give marketing more ownership of the content being delivered to the customer. So back to kind of one voice, and everybody's on the same page. So great tool.
Right. So you mentioned Discover.org, which
Yeah, Discover.org, I'm a big fan of that, because Discover.org, you can put in all kinds of parameters. So at NIAR, for example, customers that tend to be a good fit are ones that have Cloudera.
Right.
So I can type in, I can put in all the different states, type in Cloudera, here they all come, okay. I want to call it, because if they have Cloudera and also if they have Gigamon, they're even a better fit. So if they have Cloudera and Gigamon, I can put both of those in and I'll say, hey, here's all the customers in this territory with Cloudera and Gigamon. Call on those first, right? Because if they have those two technologies, then it makes it easier to sell Niara. Because some of you, if you're selling a technology or whatever, it might be complementary to something else. So you want to know if they have it. Conversely, you might want to know if they have your competitor's product, right, too. So I use that. On the forecasting front, I've used it at my previous company and I really liked it, a technology called Clari. I don't know if any of you heard of it before, but CLARI. And what that does is it's uses some analytics. And so let's say one of my reps says, hey, yeah, this thing's gonna close next week. It actually looks into how much that rep has been talking to this customer. It looks at email volume, it looks at Salesforce volume, it looks at quoting volume. And it'll give me flash a red to me saying, hey, bullshit, this guy's got happy years on. You know, the customer's not even talking to him, hasn't talked to him in a month, you know. And then also, yeah, and then it also has a rep-facing front too, because reps are lazy, including myself. So in Salesforce, when you go in and update an opportunity, you typically have to wait for it to refresh, and then squirrel and gone, right? In Clary, you can do it. All your opportunities are right there, and they're all right there in boxes. You don't have to wait for the page to refresh. So the rep has no excuse for not getting their forecast done. But I really like, as a being in management, like how it can tell you, hey, John thinks this is good, but actually he's got happy years on it. And it also go the other way, saying, hey, this guy said it's not going to close this month, but it's showing all the signs that it is going to close. He's sandbagging, right? So, pretty cool tool.
That's cool. No, I mean, maybe not a new cool tool, but I mean, I use obviously Salesforce and Marketo a lot. So I do a lot of automated programming, create a lot of auto responses to things, right? All my campaigns, pretty exclusively in Marketo.
Anything specifically for maybe lead scoring?
Marketo. I mean,
Marketo,
so
so you
yeah,
said
there's a
that.
lot of like programs that you set up in order to do that in those interesting moments, and then I work a lot with the integration, obviously, with Salesforce, so that it's really visible and easy for the sales team.
Cool. One last question I ask everyone on panels. Recent book, even a movie, but something that was just really inspirational recently that you wouldn't mind sharing. We'll save Julia for last because you had something you want to share. So, Mike.
So I can't find time to read books anymore, so and not only that, my attention span's not there. So I do read quite a few blogs and subscribe to them. I really like Peter Caputa's blog from HubSpot. So I read that on a regular basis because he actually ties in kind of sales and marketing. And then on the sales side, if you have inside sales reps, you're kind of crazy not to take note of this. So there's another local entrepreneur called Steve Richard. He's with a company called Exec Vision. He was one of the founders of Foresight VP. He puts on a monthly, what's called a call camp, and users can submit calls that they have with their customers, like cold calls, and then they'll grade it.
Wow.
And they'll do it as an online thing, and it's very fun. They make it very interactive, and it is like I've been in sales for 14 years, probably made, I don't know, 10,000 plus, more than that, cold calls. And every single time I listen to it, I get something out. I'm like, that was brilliant. And so it's just a monthly webinar. They have recordings. It's on execvision.com. I think that, or no, execvision.io. But those are really the two things that I visit.
Yeah, Fall Camp is brilliant.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Right.
I don't know, I've read a lot of books, but one of them I thought that was interesting recently that I read. It's been around for a while, but the name of the book is called Willpower. And I don't know if anybody's read it. It's called Willpower, but it actually goes into the science of willpower. And then what I derived out of it was some interesting things. So I'll leave everybody with this tip. Has anybody ever been pulled over, had to deal with the police, had to go to traffic court?
Never.
Okay, so yeah, I'm going to give you some advice. So this book actually figures it out. They also look into people's biology, blood sugar, stuff like that. And they looked at all the traffic court statistics, and judges tend to default to a guilty verdict after 10:30, between 10:30 and noon. And they also tend to go to a guilty verdict between 3 p.m. and 5 p.m. So, and the reason they attribute that to low blood sugar. So I actually started changing the times of my sales calls and meetings, and lo and behold, so if you do a sales meeting when somebody has just finished breakfast or not too long after, you're going to have a higher result. Same thing right after lunch. If you have to have a sales call that's 11 a.m. or at 3 p.m., I started doing this. I would bring in like candy, like Reese's Cups, and I'd throw them on the table, and they always grabbed them, started eating them, and then they perked up. I know it sounds totally crazy, but the book itself went into like why great people do dumb things, like Bill Clinton and Anthony Weiner and those guys, and it hey, how can somebody, I know, how can somebody this successful?
Can you expand on that?
That's why
I got some
I
slides.
actually watched it.
Yeah, but I mean, it's more captivating than you think. I kind of felt like, okay, this is going to be happy horse shit, but then I got into it. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is crazy.
That might be you too, it might be a placebo, right? You're like, if I had to sell now,
Yeah.
you know, it's gonna be better, so I'm gonna be more energetic.
That's true.
Is there a run?
So mine, yeah. So it's a little levity for you guys. So don't take yourself so seriously. So this is the Marketunist thing. This is an example of one of them. Because I think that honestly, we get so involved sometimes as marketers, right? In everything that we do, there's a lot of things to do, and all this technology, and all these things to deal with. But you know, these things are great because it's food for thought, right? It's food for thought to think like, am I doing too much? Am I doing the right thing? Am I showing the right things? Because I will tell you, this is like fascinating, but a lot of people are in this camp where they show metrics that don't mean a damn thing, right? So it's a little humor for your, your week, but also a little bit of insight too, the Marketunist.
And you know what's interesting about recording too, is when you go to Manhattan, I mean, one of the largest out-of-home advertisers is Apple, right? So they're pushing technology, but they're billboards. They paint half of buildings with them and stuff. It was interesting.
Well, this is brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you.